Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out M through N. This will be a fun one because this is probably one of the longer ones. So, we'll start from the top with Machinarium. An absolutely lovely game. It's a point-and-click adventure with an absolutely fantastic art style. So yeah, as you can see, it's a sort of, not so much steampunky as much as just steam, where everybody's a robot, everybody's got problems, you need to help out with their problems in order to make your way through the lovely Machinarium City. And the game is just absolutely lovely. It's got a ton of puzzles to do, and if you need help on any of the puzzles, you can literally unlock a hint book that'll help you through the puzzles. And it's just, God almighty, it's lovely. It's brilliant. Adorable. Wonderful. Madden NFL 13, the one Madden game that got released by Electronic Arts. It's a Madden game. I have played a fair bit of it. It's a Madden game. You play football. You've got a career mode. You've got the Dynasty or the Superstar modes. You've got all of the stuff back from when this game originally came out. It's all there. It works. The performance isn't fantastic, but what are you going to do about that, right? Magical Beat is a columns like. Is it Columns? I'm not entirely sure if Columns is the right game I'm thinking of. But yeah, the idea is that it's a music sort of columns game where you have to get as many of these blocks together as possible to blow them up. And you got to try and put them down in as close to the beat as possible so you can keep your chain going. Otherwise, it'll keep you from keeping your chain going. It's actually very hard, especially on the harder stages. So, you know, if you're looking for a hard puzzle game, here you go. Otherwise, stay away. But the music's all pretty good, and it's got music from Guilty Gear and BlazBlue, so you can definitely have a lot of fun with that. Mahjong Carnival, Mahjong Gold, Mahjong Royal Towers, Mahjong World Conquest, those are all 8-floor games. Mahjong World Contest is a game that I bought, and they forgot to make it so that the full version was actually the full version. It was just the demo, because they're fucking idiots. Malicious Rebirth is a 3D combat game, not entirely unlike Dynasty Warriors. The problem is that every stage is a gigantic boss. So there's a huge room with a ton of enemies around. It's really freaking slow. It's hard to tell when you're about to be attacked, and it's just sluggish as anything, and it's just not that fun to play. It's a bit of a pain. I really didn't like it that much, if you couldn't tell. So we'll move on from that. Mahlia is an absolutely insane card game. I can't say anything more than go watch my video on it. Because it makes no fucking sense whatsoever. That's all I can say on that. Mega Tag Mention Blanc plus Neptune vs. Zombies isn't supposed to be out yet. But it got released by accident a couple of hours ago. But I do have a review code, so I will be doing a video on that in the near future. Men's Room Mayhem. It's a strategy game. Well, not so much a strategy game. If you've ever played Flight Control, it's this, but with bathrooms. So yeah, as you can see, you draw lines for all your people to follow. If two people run into each other, that's going to be a problem. Women come in, and if the women have to touch the men, they'll be very unhappy about it. Yeah, it's it's kind of silly, but it works roughly like that. It's not too bad, and for $2, you can't ask for much. Well, you can ask for a lot for $2, but I mean, for $2, it's not that bad at all. The Metal Gear Solid HD collection are the two best ports the Vita's seen, and they came out at the very beginning of the Vita's life. So, yeah, the ports of 2 and 3, they include the MGS2's VR missions and MGS3's Metal Gear 1 and 2 as well. So you've got a bunch of stuff to go through here. And all the ports work great. They run at a solid frame rate. They all look fantastic. I mean, the cutscenes for 3 don't run very well, but still, the ports are very good and they're well worth picking up. Metal Slug 3 is a remaster of Metal Slug 3, which is the original Neo Geo game. And the idea is it's a 2D shoot 'em up, where you're platforming and you have to shoot a lot of enemies and you can ride around a lot of different vehicles and stuff. And it's a really good remaster. It's got online multiplayer and everything. The one problem, why they did Metal Slug 3 and Metal Slug 3 alone and not something like the Metal Slug Collection on PSP, I don't know. They only picked one Metal Slug game instead of like the 5 or 6 that there are on PSP. So if you want Metal Slug, go get the PSP collection. It's got a couple of extra loading times, like in the middle, but other than that, same bloody games. No idea why they bothered with just that one. Metrico. It's a platformer based around charts, basically. And the charts are modified by doing different things with your feeder, like pressing buttons, moving your accelerator, changing where you are in particular, and just interesting stuff like that. Game Capture Kit had a fit, so I had to close the screenshots. But it's a really neat little concept. I would have paid like $10 for it. I got a review code. $10 would be a good price for this. I think $14 is a little bit expensive, but still pretty neat. Mind Zero is a bore. It's a very generic dungeon RPG that's obviously taking a lot of inspiration from Persona, but it doesn't know how to make its characters interesting, unlike Persona. It all feels like just a massive ripoff, honestly. And funnily enough, this guy here is actually voiced by the same guy who voiced, fuck, what's his name? Oh god, I can't even remember the names of the characters from Persona now. It's been so long since I played that fucking game. But yeah, there's a bunch of voice actors from Persona in this game as well. It's kind of strange how heavy they push this, and the dungeon crawling RPG gameplay stuff isn't very good either. There aren't that many good dungeon crawlers on Vita, despite the fact that there's a ton of them. The PlayStation Vita edition of Minecraft. It's Minecraft, but on the Vita. It's the same limitations as the console version, so you only get like a 600 by 600 block world, but there's multiplayer for up to 4 players. You've got all the content there. You do have to like make multiple worlds in order to try and find like specific secrets and all that, which is a little disappointing, but it works. It's Minecraft multiplayer, runs alright, keeps getting patches, so there you go. It's also got a lot of skin packs, which admittedly I've got nothing against having a lot of skin packs. It's just, yeah, it's a little weird. Minutes. A lot like Don't Die Mr. Robot. It's a dodge 'em up where you have to try and increase and decrease your size in order to both avoid the black ones and collect the orange lines. So, if the bigger you are, the more points you get. But the smaller you are, the easier it is to avoid stuff. So it's an interesting little back and forth. There is a bit of memorization going on here, so you know, not that great. But at the same time, it's still pretty fun. And I wouldn't be against recommending it in the slightest, honestly. The MLB games, there's 4 of them, so I'll just talk about them all at once. They're all baseball games. I played through, I believe it was 14, or at least some of it, and it was a really, I mean, it did feel like baseball. It was also quite hard, so yeah, it's a decent, like, baseball simulation. You've got a ton of stuff you can go do. Unfortunately, they stopped making this series. MLB 16 will not be making its way to the Vita, but, well, there you go. If you want a portable version of MLB, go for 14 or 15 or whatever. Take your pick. Modnation Racers Road Trip. It's Modnation Racers. You can build your own characters, you can build your own cars, you can build your own tracks. And the unfortunate thing about it is that not only does it not have online multiplayer, but the frame rate is terrible. We're talking like 10 frames a second here. It's like a third of what it should be. I don't understand why the frame rate's so bad. But at the same time, it's not that bad, but considering that we've got Sonic and All-Stars out now, there's really no point in playing Modnation Racers. Monster Mon Piece. A really fan service heavy card game. The idea is that there are 3 lanes with 6 spaces apiece, 7 spaces apiece, and you have to spawn cards on these spaces which all move every turn, and they all have different abilities. Like some monsters can increase other monsters' bonuses, a bunch of card art there, and there's a ton of different strategy that can be employed in this way, and they've all got different elements and stuff like that. And if you put down the same color monsters at the same time, you'll get more mana for it, and there's a lot of strategy to be involved here. The downside is that you've got card power-ups, so cards can be actively powered up, and you won't know what the power-up actually does until after you've applied it. So you might get an actively worse card that you don't want, and you'll have to just upgrade it back to 1 and then 2 again. I will be back momentarily. Knew I was going to get interrupted again at some point. Anyway, so as I was saying, you might have a little bit of a problem with upgrading cards. And again, when you have to upgrade cards, and you get new cards which are more powerful than cards that you've previously had by default, it creates a bit of an imbalance, which is a bit of a pain in the ass when this game has online multiplayer. and you can hop onto the online multiplayer only to get wrecked by someone who has a completely better deck than you. So that's a bit of a problem. But still, playing this game single player and getting your deck optimized and all that is still pretty damn fun to begin with, and I would recommend it. It's still pretty great. Kind of annoying they only let you buy like one pack at once. It would be nice if there was a way to actively get like more card packs, but deal with it. Monster Bag. It's a puzzle game where you have to get from person to person and get to your child friend without alerting anyone. And there are things like boss fights and silly stuff like that. And if anyone sees you, they'll basically destroy you in the most hilarious of ways. The whole game's got this comedic overtone going for it that's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, as you can see, God almighty, that's terrifying. But yeah, Monster Bag is a wonderful little thing, and it's well worth buying and playing. Mortal Kombat. The online multiplayer is down for it now, unfortunately, but you still got all the single player content. So it is a full port of Mortal Kombat 9, which is the first remake that they put out. And it's got all the characters, even all the DLC ones. And it's just, it's a really good fighting game. And it's a good port. It looks a bit shit, but it's still a good fighting game, more or less. It keeps a solid frame rate. It's got a ton of content in it. So you've got plenty to go do. I do like Mortal Kombat. I also believe you can do ad hoc multiplayer still, so that's kind of nice. MotoGP 14 and 13. They're motorcycle games. I haven't played that much of them, but from what I actually have played, they are pretty decent emulations of the sport. You can't just go flying around corners. You have to actively brake and take your time and try not to pass everyone, otherwise you'll cause a 5 motorbike build-up. But yeah, they're good, they're there, they work. Motorstorm RC. This is interesting. It's like a bird's eye view of a course, and you have to go and race other sorts of vehicles on these tiny ass tracks in order to successfully, you know, win the races. And you've got lots of different cars and tracks to unlock, and there's a couple of DLC packs that add even more cars and tracks, and there's a ton of stuff to do in the campaign. So yeah, it's actually a lot of fun. It's a bit wiggly, especially with some of the car classes, and you can buy everything in the game for like $1.50, which is kind of strange. But yeah, you can buy the whole game in one go for like $10, and it's probably well worth that. It's a fun racing game. It's no Sonic and All-Stars, but it's still pretty damn good. Miss Germinator. It's Germinator, but with better balanced gameplay mechanics, more colors, more abilities, more levels, and yeah, that's basically it. It's still well worth buying. You should probably buy that one first, actually. Mudfim. I actually really like this game. It's a dirt bike game from the same people who make MotoGP. And the idea is you have to race around these courses, and you have like little turbo boosts that you can get. And these turbo boosts will give you like, yeah, obviously they'll boost you. You got items, they'll give you turbo boosts. And you can also do things like tricks in the air that'll let you get up even more speed. So the idea is you have to try and get as many tricks perfect as possible. And it looks great, it runs really damn well, and there's a lot of stuff to do in it. So it's actually really good. Muramasa Rebirth. Best 2D action game on the Vita that's not a beat 'em up like Dragon's Crown. So the idea is that you are one of either a demon or a boy possessed by a demon, and you have to go through this massive world beating up a ton of different bosses and enemies while upgrading your character and getting lots of different blades. They'll have their own special attacks. It moves fast. It looks fantastic. This art is incredible. It's got great writing. It feels really atmospheric. It's got some fantastic atmosphere. It's got lots of stuff to do, and you've got 4 DLC episodes which add even more to the game, and then you can go back on the DLC characters and beat all the main game's bosses. It's a wonderful game, and it's well worth buying, even all the DLC. Murasaki Baby is a weird little 2D platformer puzzler game where you have to guide Baby and their balloon home to their mother. And there's a really weird style going on here. You meet all sorts of characters and solve their problems, and they play with the idea of all these different balloons and stuff really well. It's a nice little game. Problem being, it's really short. You can get it done in like 3 hours, and for $14.99, that's a little bit much, but it's still a Cool little game. I liked it. This one, not so much. Murasaki missed a Caras Journey. They wanted it to be a Diablo game. It's terrible. Like, it feels like PlayStation Mobile's resurrected zombie corpse. The attacks are terrible. It looks terrible. The animations look like they were done by someone in college. The story makes no sense. The freaking... It's just terrible. Like, go watch my video on the first 15 minutes of the game, because it's just that bad. Mutant Mudds. It's a very minimalistic 2D platformer where the only things you have are a gun and a jetpack, and you have to collect as many of the tokens as possible and get to the end of the level. It's very hard, it's got a lot to do, and while a lot of people will be turned off by it, if you're looking for something really hard and really retro, this is your game. It's still pretty good though, more or less, and it's also fucking tiny. My Singing Monsters. I never played this, so we'll move on from it, but it's a free-to-play, like, iOS port, so it's not like it really matters that much, does it? Need for Speed Most Wanted. It is basically what Burnout Paradise 2 would have turned out to be if Burnout Paradise 2 actually got made, but the idea is, it's a big open-world racing game. These screenshots are not representative of the Vita version. The Vita version looks a lot worse than this, but there is a big open world with like police to outrun, billboards to smash, cars to race. There's online multiplayer for up to 4 people. It's got a lot going for it, but it just feels like a lesser quality knockoff of Burnout Paradise. God, what I wouldn't give for a Vita port of Burnout Paradise, I tell you, but it's still alright. It's still a decent game in its own right, and it's $20 as well, so it's not that big of a deal. Nekaburo Cat's Block. It's a puzzle game. It's a lot like, it's basically columns. Get 4 of them together, they'll fall down, you get points. Get more cats by playing through the game, get special abilities, and yeah, not fantastic. There's a bunch of like stuff that you can collect outside of the levels as well, but it's not really worth the time. Yeah, pretty basic columns game, not too terrible, not great either. New Little King Story. You have to go and find villagers and take them out with you in order to do shit, like beat up on monsters or collect resources and stuff like that. It's a pretty neat concept, and it is a sequel to Little King's... Oh, no, is this a sequel or is this a remake to Little King's Story? I think it's a remake, but yeah. The one problem with it is that it runs terrible pretty much all the time. Frames tend to drop into the single digits after a while, so... Yeah, that's kind of a pain in the ass, but the game itself is still pretty damn cool. Building up your town slowly and getting into romantic relationships with someone named Apricot. Who named you that, you poor girl? And yeah, you've also got a bunch of like DLC costumes and all that, because of course you do, right? Nidhogg is a 2-dimensional fighting game, but not in the traditional sense. Both players have access to this fencing utility here. And all the levels are a series of basically straight lines, in the sense that it's a plane and you have to push the other player back by successfully out-fencing them. Your fence weapon, your sword, whatever you want to call it, has 3 different positions, up, middle, and bottom. And you can stab the enemy, and if the enemy dies, you have the opportunity to move forward. And if you move forward, you get closer to knocking them off the edge and killing them. Or, in this game's case, jumping off the edge and then getting yourself eaten by the Nidhogg, which is the giant space worm. But yeah, the game itself, while it's very minimalistic and only has a very simple set of moves, it's very engaging and very deep. It's very deep. You can take a very long time getting good at this game. You can do things like throw your swords. There's a lot of jumping involved. There's a lot of environmental obstacles. Again, the way is a really, really good game. Unfortunate thing being, there was no one playing multiplayer when it came out, and I imagine there's none now. So that's disappointing. Nihil Umbra is a puzzle platformer that spends 2.5 hours being really easy and then gets really, really hard. There's a bunch of different elements you can get, and you can use that to change how the world works, do things like stick stuff to walls and save yourself from lava and just do all sorts of silly stuff like that. And it's a bit weird that they decided to do it the way they did, with just the weird off-balance and difficulty, but at the same time, it's alright. I just couldn't get any further than the halfway point where it got real hard, because it really did get hard. So, there you go. That's just a warning for you. Ninja Gaiden Sigma Plus is a good port of a really, really hard game. The idea is that you are a ninja, and it is a very, very tough life being a ninja. You've got lots of different enemies, and they can all attack and do massive amounts of damage, and they can get you in combos and kill you, so you have to be constantly dodging out of the way and finding their openings to attack them with and avoiding other enemies and stuff. Very, very difficult. And it's still extremely satisfying to play through a game of Ninja Gaiden Sigma Plus. And the game's a good port, except it only runs at 30 FPS and not at 60, which is a bit of a disappointment, honestly. But still, that's pretty good. Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 Plus. Not so much. First 5 minutes of the game that I played, I started a new game, watched the intro cutscene, and then I got thrown into a level pretty much immediately. My camera got stuck behind a plank and I couldn't see what I was doing. And then when it got out from behind the plank, the frame rate dropped immediately to something like 15 to 10 frames a second. It was ridiculous. And I just deleted the game immediately, so I only ever played 5 minutes of it. Like, Ninja Gaiden Sigma Plus wasn't that bad at all, not even close. Ninja Senki DX. The idea is, it's a NES-inspired platformer with a lot of memorization to do, where you have to go through and beat all the enemies and collect as many coins as possible and make it to the end. And the game tries to emphasize survival, and you do have like ninja stars to attack with and stuff. There's a bunch of different bosses and enemies to take on and all that. My problem with that is that it's so focused on memorization that it kind of forgets to be an actual game more than just a memory test. You have to remember where everything is. Some stuff doesn't even come up. Excuse me. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't, like, come up until, what's the word I'm looking for? Until you're too close to avoid it, which really feels cheap. There are some cheap moments like that in the game. It's just a bit of a pain to play through, honestly. I'm not that big of a fan of Ninja Senki. No heroes allowed, no puzzles either. Is a free-to-play adaptation of the game, which kind of makes that name seem a little bit ironic, honestly. Because the reason why that game was popular was because you had a bunch of really cool puzzles to do. But basically, it's a free-to-play game. You play through a match 3 where you have to match 3 blocks together, and you have to save as many civilians as possible and then use them to like dig out your dungeon and find stuff for you to use. It's nowhere near as entertaining as what's the word I'm looking for? Nowhere near as entertaining as the PSP versions. Norn 9 Var Commons is another Otome game from Axis Games. You're a kid who gets thrown back in time and you have to find a waifu and, you know... Yeah, just a bit weird. It's a weird story. I can't remember exactly what it's about, but again, visual novel, absolute pain in the ass to play on my schedule, so I still need to get around to playing fucking Steins Gate. We'll get into that. Nuclear Throne. Nor 9 does work fine, by the way. It's fine on the engine. You've got plenty of stuff to be comfortable with, so if you want to check it out, you can go check it out. Nuclear Throne. It's a twin-stick action shooter where it's a roguelike, and you have to go and collect as many different kinds of guns as possible and use them to shoot enemies and try and stay alive for as long as possible, because if you die, you have to start from the very beginning with none of your upgrades. It's very fast, it's very furious, and it's a hell of a lot of fun to play. And you just end up being... you just end up playing it over and over again, trying to get better, but you can just never get past that one particular part, and then you do, and it's like, yes, and then you die to the immediate next one, you're like, no, and it's actually a really good game. Problem being that it actually has a fair few performance drops, especially when there's a lot of explosions on screen, so be careful for that, but you'll probably be fine. Nun Attack. This is a strategy game, if I remember correctly. I remember this game, kind of. But yeah, you have to upgrade, you have to give your nuns a bunch of guns, and then you basically have to order them around the screen and keep them out of the way of danger and try and keep them all alive throughout a bunch of different missions, and it's just... I honestly don't remember having fun with this, but maybe I did. I think I did a video on this a while ago, but yeah. I don't remember, honestly. It's so average that I can't even remember what it was. Anyway, this has been M through N. I'll be back next time for O through P. This has been Blue Maxima, and I'll see you all next time.